Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Lewis McLean.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Saoirse Healy.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C. Stewart. Broadcasting Scotland is Scotland's independent broadcaster, providing factual news, reporting on the issues important to the people of Scotland.
We are committed to public service broadcasting, and with your support, we will produce even more programmes.
Provide opportunities for young people interested in media production and broadcasting, and challenge preconceptions of what Scottish media looks like, amplifying Scotland's voice and reflecting its communities.
We can already deliver high-quality live news, and we will create the highest quality programmes for you to enjoy. But we can only do that with your support.
So please subscribe to and share our channel or donate to Broadcasting Scotland via the link in the description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. The first item of business is general questions. At question number 1, I call Roz McCall.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the latest homelessness in Scotland statistics.
Cabinet Secretary Mary McAllen.
The statistics, Presiding Officer, they demonstrate the scale of the challenge that we face in reducing homelessness. Earlier this month, I delivered my Housing Emergency Action Plan, which sets out the direct and immediate measures that will be taken to prevent homelessness, to deliver more affordable homes and to make better use of existing stock. This includes up to £4.9 billion over the next 4 years to deliver around 36,000 affordable homes, doubling our acquisition funding this year to £80 million, allowing councils to act now to acquire family-sized homes and get children out of temporary accommodation, and a £4 million investment in the expansion of Housing First. And of course, this week we have been hearing Stage 3 of the Housing Bill, which, if passed, will create a gold standard anti-homelessness law in the form of Ask and Act.
Roz McCall.
Presiding Officer, the Cabinet Secretary, I'm glad to hear, has agreed that there is a problem. We've got 10,000 children currently in temporary accommodation, some spending years in limbo. That figure is stagnant. We have recently found out from a report in the Herald that there has been nearly 40,000 violations of homelessness regulations by Scottish local authorities in the past 8 years, with that number almost doubling in the last year alone. We have a housing emergency, there is a homelessness crisis, and nothing seems to be changing. So when does the Cabinet Secretary believe that the money and the policies that she continually champions will finally improve the situation for the people of Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Presiding Officer, I will never see the statistics that came out last week and claim that they're anything other than stark and requiring urgent action. We have been dealing in recent years with a perfect storm of difficulties, with the prevailing economic situation being in a stagnant or downward trajectory, and household finances being severely under pressure with inflation and cost of living, pandemic, Brexit, etc. And that has meant that despite Scotland's having some of the most protective anti-homelessness laws of any country, we are in a difficult situation. That's why the Housing Emergency Plan that I set out takes action across 3 areas: ending children living in unsuitable accommodation, supporting the housing needs of vulnerable communities, and that third pillar, building our future, investing in new and affordable homes. So that, combined with the actions that we've been taking since May last year, I hope will very quickly make a difference. But of course there's much of this which is out with our control, not least social security, and I would take this opportunity to urge the UK Government to, for example, reverse the bedroom tax.
Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As you just heard, it's been reported that more than 16,000 housing violations have happened in just the past year. Will the Cabinet Secretary acknowledge this report, calling its housing emergency declaration a sham, after breaches of a legal duty to provide homeless people, including children and pregnant women, have doubled in just 1 year?
Cabinet Secretary.
No, I wouldn't agree with that characterisation. What I would absolutely say is that breaches of statutory obligations by councils are not acceptable. But that's exactly why I am working with local authorities, in particular those, the top 5 with the most strained homelessness services, to drive action now. And we drive action now in particular through that acquisitions fund that the government has now been providing for a number of years, which I doubled in the statement to the 2nd of September to 80 million. That is exactly about asking councils to go now to acquire family homes on the market and get children out of temporary accommodation with that. Another instruction that was part of that plan was asking councils to adopt the Alacho guidance on flipping, contacting people living in accommodation which is otherwise suitable except that it's temporary, and discuss with the household whether that can be flipped to their permanent accommodation. These actions are about taking action now, and that's all backed up by more investment over the next 4 years.
Thank you. Question number 2 has been withdrawn. Question number 3, I call Jamie Halcro Johnston.
To ask the Scottish Government how many free personal care hours were assessed by local authorities to be needed, but were subsequently not delivered in 2024-25.
Minister Tom Arthur.
The information the member has requested for 2024-25 has not yet been published. However, data from previous years that focuses on free personal nursing care uptake is available on the Scottish Government's website, which provides published statistics. The 2024-25 data has a release date of November 2025. The Scottish Government recognises the cost of care can be high for people self-funding their residential care. This is why we have increased the rates paid for free personal nursing care rates by 29.5% since April 2020, providing an additional investment of £40 million over the last 3 years.
Jamie Halcro Johnston.
Thank the Minister for that answer, although I would welcome a little bit more kind of detail looking forward. Of course, local councils assess and deliver free personal care, but it was legislated in this Parliament, and the SNP's website hails the policy as one of the landmark achievements of devolutions. But too many older and vulnerable people across my Highlands and Islands region are being left waiting months, if not years, for the support they've been assessed as needing. Some are left languishing in already crowded hospitals because there's not the care support available to get them to their homes, or a place in our under-pressure care homes. So does the Minister accept the seriousness of the situation across the Highlands and Islands and across Scotland? And without repeating the usual excuses, what does he say to those waiting for the care support they've been assessed as needing but are left waiting to receive?
Minister.
Well, let me be clear, I do not want to see anyone unduly waiting for the care that they have been assessed as requiring. We are working constructively and collaboratively with our partners across local government. Intensely, that is work that has been led on by the Cabinet Secretary, supported by myself, and we are going to continue to do so. We have put significant additional investment into health and social care this year, £21.7 billion, £2.2 billion into social care, which has exceeded what our original commitment had been, and we will continue to engage constructively with partners to drive forward improvements.
Christine Graham.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Has the Labour Government's increase in employers' national insurance had an impact on delivery of free personal care?
Minister.
Regrettably, it has, as the sector has expressed very clearly since the outset of the year. The costs that are going to be incurred by the sector as a consequence of the UK Government's decision to increase employer national insurance contributions will have a material impact. Indeed, we estimate this will cost the sector over £80 million this year. This is, of course, further compounded by the decisions of the UK Labour Government around restricting international visas for care workers. Again, something that has been roundly condemned by those operating in the sector, and I would urge the UK Government to reverse course.
Question number 4, Liam McArthur.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with NHS Orkney regarding reported delays in ophthalmology appointments for patients.
Minister Jenny Minto.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. During a visit to the Balfour Hospital on the 15th of July, the Cabinet Secretary met with NHS Orkney's senior team to discuss their operational improvement plan and the progress being made through our additional investment of nearly £73,000 in ophthalmology. This was allocated to NHS Orkney to ensure no patient is waiting longer than 52 weeks for a new outpatient appointment or inpatient day case admission by 31st March 2026. Additionally, the Scottish Government commissioned Centre for Sustainable Delivery and officials to meet regularly with the board. This year, NHS Orkney have had a clinical services review and an ophthalmology clinically led peer review, which have made recommendations in order to deliver sustainable services for their patients.
Liam McArthur.
Can I thank the Minister for that response? And at that meeting the Cabinet Secretary had at the Balfour, I'm sure he was made aware of the significant backlogs in ophthalmology appointments in Orkney. I've been contacted by constituents who report waits of up to and exceeding 3 years for treatment. From my discussions with NHS Orkney, I know they are trying to take steps to reduce these backlogs, but given that some patients face permanent sight loss while waiting for treatment, will the Scottish Government commit to providing additional support in the short term to help tackle these unacceptable waits?
Minister.
I thank Liam McArthur for his supplementary question, and these exact topics were discussed with the Cabinet Secretary when he visited in July. I'm very happy to consider and look at the proposal that Mr McArthur makes. I know that NHS Orkney has had access to the Global Citizen post for ophthalmology, sharing with NHS Highland, Orkney and the Western Isles, but that post is currently unfilled, and NHS Orkney and Highland have been working together as to how additional capacity can be delivered. But I absolutely recognise the concerns that are raised, and where in other areas of healthcare we're able to work across healthcare boundaries, I would hope something similar could be worked out for this.
Question number 5, Maggie Chapman.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on any discussions that it has had with Police Scotland about the policing of protests outside hotels and other accommodation for people seeking asylum.
Minister Siobhan Brown.
Presiding Officer, Scottish ministers have regular discussions with Police Scotland on a range of issues, including the policing of protests. Operational policing is a matter for Police Scotland, and they have confirmed that they have the appropriate resources to ensure the safety of those in attendance and to mitigate disruption to the wider community. Police Scotland is a rights-based organisation committed to facilitating peaceful protests and counter-demonstrations to allow those seeking to protest to exercise their human rights. But let me be clear. There is no place for criminality or hate crime on our streets, and I fully support Police Scotland to take the appropriate and proportionate action in response to such behaviour.
Maggie Chapman.
In the North East, we've seen anti-immigration protests in Peterhead, West Hill, Aberdeen and Dundee. The Stobswell Forum in Dundee issued a statement highlighting the fear and alarm caused by these so-called protesters following their actions in a public park. The same protesters then marched in an unorganised way over the A90 Kingsway and held an intimidating and hate-filled protest outside the homes of asylum seekers. They spread false information, anti-immigration information online, causing fear and alarm amongst parents of young children. They hurled stones and other missiles at anti-fascists. What proactive action is being taken to respond to the far-right influence on these protests and the intimidation they cause to residents and local communities?
Minister.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I am deeply concerned about some of the rhetoric we are seeing across the UK, which should have no place in our society. Therefore, it is vital that factual information is also placed in the public domain. And I would say, as elected members across the UK, that as democratically elected representatives with a platform, we have a duty and a responsibility to ensure that we call out any dangerous misinformation. And we certainly do not perpetrate it. People have the right of peaceful protest in a democracy, but the protests outside the hotels go far beyond what is acceptable in our country, which historically has a humane approach to those fleeing conflict and persecution, and one which we should be proud. These protests are creating a sense of real fear and alarm to those who have already gone through so much already. In saying that, it is important that we engage with the people protesting, to hear their concerns, to understand the reasons that are driving them to protest. And I know Police Scotland continue to engage with protesters through liaison officers, and the Scottish Government has funded the Centre for Good Relations to work with those who are protesting to hear their concerns.
Mercedes Villalba.
Thank you. I'm aware, obviously, we've brought in legislation to create boundaries, buffer zones around clinics to prevent people accessing services from being harassed. I wonder what consideration the Minister or the Government has given to establishing some kind of boundary around residential dwellings to prevent people in their homes being harassed.
Minister.
Thank you. The right to free speech and protest is at the heart of a healthy democracy, and the Scottish Government is committed to uphold the right, but understands the distress that these protests are causing to residents across asylum accommodation. Creating buffer zones, similar to those introduced with the abortion clinics, would require new legislation, and we don't have any current plans to do that, but we will continue to monitor the situation.
Question number 6, Jackie Dunbar.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the steps that it has taken to increase service capacity in GP practices within NHS Grampian.
Cabinet Secretary Neil Gray.
Thank you, President Officer. In August, I announced that additional investment of £15 million in general practice. GP practices in Grampian will receive £1.5 million of this funding, which builds on the increased investment of over £100 million we have already made in general practice over the last 2 years. We've been listening carefully to the views of GPs, and this new investment will help ease financial pressures, support workforce retention and recruitment, build service capacity and support the day-to-day running of GP services in Grampian and indeed across Scotland. And we remain in discussions with the sector on the provision of further support in the future, but this initial instalment demonstrates this Government's commitment to making it easier for people to see their GP and to ensuring more NHS funding goes into primary and community care.
Jackie Dunbar.
The Cabinet Secretary will, of course, be aware of the recent pressures facing NHS Grampian, as he just said, and I know he will join me in thanking all of the NHS staff in Grampian who have been working hard to manage these pressures. Can he please therefore provide any further update on how the Scottish Government is supporting NHS Grampian to relieve their pressures and ensure patients are receiving the care they need in a timely fashion?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, President Officer. I thank Jackie Dunbar for her question. I am indeed aware of the pressures, and I echo the thanks to staff in NHS Grampian for their commitment, their hard work, their dedication to provide the best care possible. There are people still waiting too long in Grampian and elsewhere, and this is not good enough. Our budget provides a record £21.7 billion for health and social care, with over £110 million to tackle the longest waits. NHS Grampian are receiving over £9 million to support specialties with the longest waits, and we have established an assurance board to agree an improvement plan. Grampian has also welcomed a new Chief Executive this week, and we will ensure the board has the support to deliver the plan and address any further opportunities for improvement.
Alexander Burnett.
Thank the Presiding Officer. Now, constituents are becoming increasingly concerned about the lack of oversight of privately contracted GP surgeries such as Arford Medical Practice, which has a ratio of 1 GP to 6,000 patients, over 3 times higher than the national average. Now, the company poorly delivering this NHS Grampian contract is also serving Ayrshire. Now, whilst health boards have visibility of who they contract GP practices with, they do not have visibility of contracts that are held with other health boards, and this makes it impossible to hold accurate data on GP to patient ratios, as GPs may work across different practices and different health boards. So can I ask, what steps will the Cabinet Secretary take to ensure full transparency on contracted medical practices across Scotland?
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you. I thank Alexander Burnett for his question. He understands the nature of the contractual obligations that are in place through the contract, and indeed the obligations that are on boards to have line of sight around the ensuring that GP practices are delivering on their contractual obligations. The point that he has raised around the particular practice he quotes is concerning, and I'd be keen to be furnished with further detail from him on that, to ensure that everything possible can be done to ensure that we do have a level of GP to patient ratio that would be commensurate with ensuring the type of services that we expect and the level of access that we expect, which has been made plain and clear to both GPs and to health boards.
Question number 7, Claire Haughey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it supports youth employment in the Rutherglen constituency, including through youth employability services.
Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes.
Employment support for young people begins in a school setting through Skills Development Scotland's career services and developing the young workforce. Additional support for those who have left school without a positive destination is available through devolved employability services, and that support is available in every local authority area in Scotland.
Claire Haughey.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for that answer. Routes to Work South, based in Cambuslang in my constituency, is an award-winning employment champion who offers packages of tailored support and training, including to many young people, and are celebrating 20 years of operation this year. Would the Minister share my concern that if the DWP's proposed closure of Cambuslang Job Centre is to go ahead, a vital link between the services is at risk in a sector where partnership working is so vital?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I absolutely understand and share the member's concern about the proposed job centre closure. Access to support could become more difficult if that is to go ahead. And I also recognise the importance of Routes to Work South's 20 years of support in Cambuslang. It's so important that there is strong cross-sector partnership in delivering services, and these collaborations through community-led initiatives, local organisations and integrated services will continue to evolve and provide vital support.
A concise question 8, Emma Roddick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the Distress Brief Intervention Programme.
Minister Tom Arthur.
Since November 2024, the Distress Brief Intervention Programme has been live in all 31 health and social care partnership areas across Scotland for those aged 16 and over. We also have free national referral pathways to DBI via NHS 24 and via call handling centres operated by both the Scottish Ambulance Service and Police Scotland. These provide additional options for key services to refer people to DBI support.
Emma Roddick.
I thank the Minister for that answer. I'd be interested in what data on representation rates for individuals who have received DBI support has been collected and how it compares to previous representation rates for people in distress.
Minister.
I will be happy to write to the member to provide that specific information.
Thank you. That concludes general questions. The next item of business is First Minister's questions, and at question number 1, I call Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. This is Scotland's first ever Innovation Week, with a series of events including today's Innovation Summit in Edinburgh. And we can all agree that innovation is critical to business growth, creating jobs and a healthy economy. And when the SNP government launched its innovation strategy 2 years ago, they produced a scorecard to measure performance. And the scorecard was updated this morning, and here it is. And it shows that performance is declining across more than half of the government's own key measures. I'd like to ask the First Minister, is that really good enough?
First Minister.
The Government takes forward a whole range of different measures to encourage innovation in our economy, because economic growth is central to the Government's policy agenda, as I have explained to Parliament on countless occasions. The Deputy First Minister took part in the Innovation Summit this morning, and in some of the recent discussions I've had, for example, just last week with the games industry in Scotland, a sparkling example of innovation in Scotland where the collaboration between the business sector and our universities is generating substantial economic growth for Scotland. So that's just one example of the way in which the Government takes forward its innovation agenda.
Russell Finlay.
Let's look at this in a little bit more detail. One of the measures on the SNP scorecard is about the number of Scottish businesses that are innovating. And this is measured using well-established OECD rules, and it reveals a deeply worrying fact. Under the SNP, Scotland is ranked behind every single region of England. And in the week of Scotland's first ever Innovation Summit, can John Swinney explain why Scotland is trailing behind the rest of the UK?
First Minister.
What I'd say to Mr Finlay is that we've seen recent data which indicates that Scotland has the highest rate of start-ups in the United Kingdom, apart from one part of England, which indicates the culture that we are creating in Scotland to encourage business growth and business expansion. And of course, the collaboration between our universities, and the example I cited in my first answer about the gaming industry, is one very clear example about how our university community collaborates with the business community to generate economic growth. So the Government is always attentive towards supporting and encouraging and nurturing innovation in Scotland, because it is the route to prosperity for our country, and the Government is delivering on that agenda.
Russell Finlay.
It's Innovation Week. I asked about innovation and he starts talking about something completely unrelated. John Swinney seems to be in a state of denial. The SNP marked this scorecard themselves, and it shows that they're failing. And even when we look at one of the measures in here they claim is improving, it's really not much to shout about. Exactly. It claims the performance of high-growth businesses is improving. But the scorecard also reveals that Scotland is ranked 23 out of 28 European countries. Under the SNP, we're behind Romania, Bulgaria, Lithuania, and within the UK, we're behind Wales and almost every English regions. Is this really a record to be proud of?
First Minister.
In the assessment about high-growth companies, that activity is at the highest level since 2019. So what that indicates is that we are making progress beyond pre-pandemic levels in Scotland. But, of course, Mr Finlay gave me a whole range of examples about other European countries. And I'd simply make the point to Mr Finlay that those other European countries are all independent countries with the full range of economic powers at their disposal. So I'm really delighted that Mr Finlay has come to Parliament today and he's made the economic argument for Scottish independence.
Russell Finlay.
Well, the independence clacks on after question 3. I'd expected that at number 4. We need innovation to grow the economy. That's how to deliver more jobs and more money for public services. But I've lost count personally of the number of hard-grafting Scottish business people who tell me about their despair at this anti-business actions of the SNP government. They're being stifled by a torrent of regulation. The SNP have imposed more red tape on businesses in hospitality, oil and gas, house building, food and drink and more. SNP income tax rates are punishingly higher than elsewhere in the UK. And what all of this means is that there are fewer opportunities for aspirational Scots to get on in life. Yeah. So will the First Minister accept that his government is actively harming Scottish business innovation and putting jobs at risk?
First Minister.
No, I won't accept that doom-laden analysis of Scotland's position, because the facts don't support Mr Finlay. Since 2007, when the SNP government came to power, GDP per person in Scotland has grown by 10.3% compared to 6.1% in the rest of the United Kingdom, while productivity has grown at an average rate of 1.1% compared to the UK average of 0.4%. So growth in Scotland has been stronger compared to the rest of the United Kingdom. Now, Mr Finlay was surprised that I picked up on his open support for Scottish independence in his question to me. But let me give him a practical example. One of the issues that businesses are wrestling with today is the increase in employers' national insurance contributions. It is stifling growth in our country. That was not a decision of my government. That was a decision of the hopeless United Kingdom Labour government, which is damaging our economy. So I rest my case. If we had the powers in Scotland to take our own economic decisions, we would be better off through independence.
Question number 2. Anna Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In every part of the country, our NHS is in crisis. This week, the Royal College of Emergency Medicine warned that last year, long waits in A&E caused over 800 deaths that could have been prevented. That is over 800 families grieving a loved one. Dr Fiona Hunter of the RCEM said, "Behind this statistic are stories of heartbreak, because these are people. Mums, dads, brothers, sisters, grandparents. Their deaths shattering the lives of families and friends. Why, year after year, is this happening under this SNP government?"
First Minister.
President, the first thing I want to say is that in any circumstance where an individual loses their life in the care of the National Health Service, and especially if they're experiencing a long wait in an accident and emergency department, then I express my regret and my apology to the families of those individuals affected, because I accept that people are waiting too long in accident and emergency, whether it's on the 4-hour, 8-hour or 12-hour waits. I would say to Mr Sarwar that the contribution made from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine is challenging information, but the Government welcomes the challenge from the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, and we are addressing the issues that the Royal College have put to us. I would also state that it is encouraging that the latest monthly A&E figures for July 2025 had the lowest number of 12-hour waits for any month since September 2023. And of course, that whole period is affected by the recovery that we are having to make from the effect of the pandemic on the operation of the health service.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, to be clear, that is 818 apologies from the First Minister, because that's the number of excess deaths because of their failure to properly operate our National Health Service. Presiding Officer, the sad fact is that despite the heroic efforts of NHS staff, the SNP is failing patients across Scotland. John Swinney will be aware of the case of Brooke Patterson, a 19-year-old footballer who broke her leg while playing in North Lanarkshire on Sunday. Despite the clear medical emergency, Brooke was left lying in pain on the pitch under jackets and coats for 5 hours until an ambulance arrived. The ambulance service blamed the 5-hour delay on hospital turnaround times, which they say ranged from 90 minutes to 3 hours in the area. And the ambulance service has now apologised. But it's not them that have broken the system. So isn't it John Swinney that should be apologising to Brooke?
First Minister.
Well, I apologise to Brooke Patterson, because I've read the story this morning and I've made some investigations this morning about the issue. So I regret very much the experience that Brooke Patterson had. As I've looked into this morning, and there'll have to be further scrutiny about this because I've had limited time to look at this morning, it looks to me as if an error was made in the classification of this particular call, which has not had the priority it should have had. Now, that's what it looks like from the basis of the limited time I've had this morning to look at that. And that's not acceptable. That is an error that has been made, and we have to look into whether that is the case and whether there are other steps that need to be taken to remedy that. But what I would say is that the efforts the Government is putting in to resolve the challenges that will sometimes affect the ability of the ambulance service to respond, which is about congestion of ambulances at hospital, requires a whole system response, which is about ensuring that we reduce any delays that individuals experience in leaving hospital. So delayed, where 97% of patients leave hospital without any delay to their discharge. About the availability of social care, about the throughput of different accident and emergency departments to make sure that the ambulance service is able to respond timely. Now, all of these issues are issues that are at the heart of the points made by the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, which is why I said in my earlier answer that the Government is addressing the issues that are raised by the Royal College, because they reflect the whole system challenges that we face in the aftermath of COVID.
Anna Sarwar.
That's 819 apologies from the First Minister to people he's failed across the country in just a few minutes. Across Scotland, our NHS is on life support. In 2018, on the SNP's watch, the maternity facility in Stranraer was closed temporarily. 7 years on, it's now permanently closed, putting women at risk. And the mothers I met are distraught. Claire Fleming said that her cousin had to travel from Stranraer to Dumfries to give birth. She ended up having to pull into a farm drive and have her baby there. Angela Armstrong, a retired GP, added, "My fear is that we're going to have a death." Every part of our NHS is struggling on John Swinney and the SNP's watch. So what does John Swinney say to all those families who have lost loved ones due to long waits, to all those who have waited hours in pain for an ambulance, and to these mothers in rural communities who can't access the maternity care they need because of his government's incompetence?
First Minister.
As I've indicated, and I've indicated this since I became First Minister, that I recognise there are challenges and weaknesses in the provision of healthcare system of healthcare in the aftermath of the pandemic, and I'm absolutely focused, along with the Health Secretary, on addressing all of those issues. So, what is happening in the National Health Service today? Well, what we're finding, as I've indicated in my last answer, that 97% of discharges from Scottish hospitals happen without delay. We are seeing that the number of appointments and procedures that were originally promised in our programme for government is not the 213,000 extra expected, exceeding our commitment by over 60,000. The number of operations performed in July was the highest in 5 years, an increase of 8.9% compared to July last year. And the number of hip and knee operations reached an all-time high in 2024. Now, in some of the issues about maternity care that Mr Sarwar raises with me, some of those will be considered, will be assessed in relation to clinical advice about the sustainability of services in some rural areas in Scotland. And that's a difficult issue, but the Government listens carefully to clinical advice. I think Parliament would expect the Government to listen carefully to clinical advice. But there's also something else that's difficult. Our National Health Service depends upon the flow of staff coming from other countries to support us in the National Health Service. And I have to say to Mr Sarwar, our challenge in that respect is being made extraordinarily more difficult because of the immigration policies pursued by the United Kingdom Government. These policies are absurd. They are making it more difficult to deliver public services. 26% of social care staff in Scotland are people who have come from other countries to this country. The UK Labour Government is making that much more difficult. I suggest Mr Sarwar should try to get his Labour Government in London to take a different stance on immigration, and we'll all be better off as a consequence.
Question number 3, Ross Greer.
Thank you. Yesterday, the First Minister said that it's our moral imperative to eradicate child poverty. And he is right to highlight that Scotland is the only part of the UK where child poverty is decreasing. But 1 in 5 children here still live in poverty. 1 in 5 children in one of the richest countries in the history of the planet. Children who arrive at school hungry. Children who will sit in freezing homes this winter because their parents can't afford their increased bills. They need the Scottish Government to do more. Many of these children's families are in huge amounts of debt, often including council tax debts. A few weeks ago, I shared with the First Minister that the rules around council tax debt in Scotland are nearly 4 times as harsh as they are in England. The debts are held and chased for 20 years here, as opposed to 6 in England. The same councils providing free school meals to children in poverty at lunchtime are sending sheriff's officers to their doors after school. Does the First Minister think it's right to chase desperate people for often unpayable debts for 4 times as long in Scotland as in England, or does he agree that it's time to change the law and wipe out these toxic, unpayable debts?
First Minister.
President, so Mr Greer knows the absolute focus I have on eradicating child poverty. It is when I became First Minister, I was asked what was the clear mission of my government, and I said it was the eradication of child poverty. And I'm leading a government that is taking measures such as the abolition of the 2-child limit, which we will abolish in March of next year, which the Labour Government has failed to abolish in the United Kingdom, but we'll abolish it in March next year. We've got the Scottish Child Payment, which is already in place. So we're taking a range of different measures, and that's also in addition to what we're doing on housing and childcare and transport and a variety of other issues. But I've got a lot of sympathy with the point that Mr Greer makes about long-standing council tax debt. Now, I know there are provisions that are being considered in the housing bill. They are proposals that have not been subject to the same amount of consultation that legislation would normally be applied for, and Parliament rightly pressurises the Government to make sure there is proper consultation, as do stakeholders, including our local authority partners. But having said all of that, I'm sympathetic to the point that Mr Greer makes, and I'm open to further dialogue about how we might take forward the ideas that he has in this respect.
Ross Greer.
I'm grateful to the First Minister for that answer, and he's absolutely right to list the policies that the Scottish Government are delivering here that are not available to families in the rest of the UK, and the Greens were proud to work with his party to deliver a number of them. But his mission is to eradicate child poverty, and he knows that everything he's announced so far just won't do that. Sally Ann Kelly, the Chief Executive of Aberlour, the children's charity, said not long ago, "It's meaningless for ministers to prioritise child poverty and promise to help families struggling to get their heads above water, while other public sector organisations are pressing them down." Sally Ann is right. That's why Aberlour wrote to the Government to support Green amendments to the Housing Bill to bring Scotland's time limit on council tax debts down from 20 years to 5. I hear the First Minister's support for the principle behind this, but Parliament will vote for the amendment on Tuesday. It would wipe out millions in toxic, unpayable council tax debts that are trapping families in cycles of poverty and financial crisis. So will the Scottish Government support this Green proposal, wipe out this debt and give thousands of families the chance they desperately need to escape from poverty?
First Minister.
President Officer, Mr Greer, quoting Sally Ann Kelly, the Chief Executive of Aberlour, provides me with an opportunity that I very much welcome in Parliament today to record my appreciation to Sally Ann Kelly on her impending retirement from this particular role. She has been a formidable champion for the children of Scotland and for Aberlour, and I record my warmest thanks to her and my good wishes to her, and I'm grateful to Mr Greer for providing me with the opportunity to do so. The issue, as I say, I'm very sympathetic to the point that Mr Greer puts to me, but we have to go through the detail to make sure that we could take such a course of action, which involves a great deal of dialogue with our local authority partners. Mr Greer will know, because he and I spent quite a lot of time wrestling with issues of liaison with local authorities, if I can put it as delicately as that, while the Green Party were in government with us. So he knows what we've got to go through. So I say to him in all clarity in Parliament today, I'm very sympathetic, but we have to get all the steps correct to make sure we do this. But we'll give it the best intentions as we consider the bill and as we take any action as a consequence.
Question number 4, Elena Whittam.
To ask the First Minister what assessment the Scottish Government has made of any implications for its work to address poverty amongst older people of recent findings by the Living Wage Foundation, the majority of people on low-income pension in the UK are unable to cover basic living costs.
First Minister.
President Officer, I am concerned by these findings, which underline the hardship that older people are facing in this cost of living crisis. This is precisely why we are investing in support for low-income pensioners, including an estimated £157 million for pension age winter heating payment and pension age disability payment, which helps with additional costs for those living with a disability. Unlike the rest of the United Kingdom, eligible low-income households, including pensioners across Scotland, are also guaranteed to receive support through our winter heating payment. Unlike the UK Government's cold weather payment, it provides a guaranteed payment every year to eligible clients, rather than relying on sustained periods of sufficiently cold weather.
Lena Whittam.
The findings in this report should concern all of us, Presiding Officer. Labour promised no austerity and more support for pensioners, yet in the midst of a cost of living crisis, they tried to slash winter fuel payment, attempted to cut disability payments and blocked WASPy women from getting compensation, all during a time of rising energy bills, food prices and inflation, pressures which are hitting struggling households the hardest. What assurances can the First Minister provide to pensioners here in Scotland that the Scottish Government is squarely in their corner and recognises the immense strain many are under?
First Minister.
President Officer, the assurance I can provide to Elena Whittam and to older people in our society is that the provisions the Government has put in place are part of the package of support that we believe is necessary to support vulnerable pensioners. I point out that sometimes Parliament faces a call for us to clamp down on social security expenditure. I think I've heard that language before, but nobody ever follows it up with specific suggestions about how that should be cut. But of course, these benefits could be under threat from some of the challenges that other parties put to us. But let me be absolutely crystal clear to Elena Whittam that this Government stands in support of the payments and the support that we put in place, and that will remain so in the Government's provisions.
Question number 5, Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's response is to reports that proposed changes to the counting method for NHS waiting lists will result in numbers falling despite no more patients being seen.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, this change to official statistics is about ensuring a patient's wait is reflected accurately. It was a decision made by Public Health Scotland to align with the latest waiting times guidance published in 2023. Indeed, the Welsh Government announced a not dissimilar move in April of this year. We know that previously some long waits may have been recorded as such due to patient unavailability, multiple missed or cancelled appointments, or the refusal of 2 reasonable offers of appointments. Under the guidance, in this scenario, the patient's waiting times clock may be reset or adjusted where clinically appropriate. This change will result in a small drop in waiting time statistics for those waiting over 52 weeks, but no change to the overall waiting list numbers. Public Health Scotland has been clear that this change will support transparency and will allow patients to identify a more accurate waiting time for their procedure.
Exactly. Brian Whittle.
Can I thank the First Minister for that answer? I have to be honest, Presiding Officer, I was ready to stand up here and quote the unofficial motto of the SNP being, "Why solve the problem when you can move the goalposts?" But the truth about that is that would do no more to reduce waiting times than the Scottish Government's statistical tinkering will. Meanwhile, the Royal College of Emergency Medicine are saying that more than 800 people died last year because they had to wait more than 12 hours in A&E. And despite the numbers coming through the doors of A&E staying broadly the same, more people are waiting longer for care. What we need is brought forward some serious, substantial plans to modernise the NHS. We need policies that reduce the need. We need to seize the opportunity that tech and AI brings, and we need to vastly improve the working conditions for those who care for us. So can I ask the First Minister, is he prepared to bring forward those substantial plans for us to debate? Because that approach, First Minister, would bring constructive support from across this chamber.
First Minister.
I'm very much welcome the engagement of Mr Whittle in these questions, because Mr Whittle has developed a contribution to Parliament which has focused unreservedly on the importance of early intervention, on the measures to reduce demand in healthcare services, and these messages are very much part of the population health framework which the Government set out earlier on this year. So I welcome Mr Whittle's engagement on this particular question. And the NHS is being reformed by the steps that we're taking, and we are undertaking more procedures, as I recounted in my answer to Mr Sarwar, within the National Health Service. But there is a need for us to concentrate much more on earlier intervention and on good health protection. And these steps are, as I said, inherent in the Government's policy programme. There is also, of course, the necessity to make sure the NHS is well funded. And the Government has brought forward a record funding settlement for the National Health Service to meet the fact that we do have an ageing population and there is greater health need as a consequence of that ageing population. But the budget does need to be supported within Parliament, and we have had parliamentary support for a budget, and I would encourage Mr Whittle to use his influence within his own party to secure support for the Government's budget, which was absent last year. And if Mr Whittle is interested in taking forward collaborative discussion to ensure that we have all party support for investment in our National Health Service, then the Government is willing to take forward those proposals.
Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome that this Scottish Government remains focused on reducing waiting times, including the preventative approach, as mentioned in the Population Health Framework. Can the First Minister outline how the Scottish Government's targeted investment of more than £110 million this year will make it faster for patients across Scotland to access the treatment that they need?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, we expect this funding to deliver 213,000 more appointments and procedures than in 2024-25, exceeding our programme for government target of delivering 150,000 extra appointments and procedures. So that greater capacity will help to address the issues around waiting times that Emma Harper has put to me. There will be a variety of different investments made to deploy that expenditure, which will ensure we can take forward developments in specific specialities, including investments in Gartnavel Hospital in Glasgow, Inverclyde Royal Infirmary, Perth Royal Infirmary, the Queen Margaret Hospital in Dunfermline and Stracathro Hospital in NHS Tayside. These sites will deliver over 2,500 additional orthopaedic and 9,500 cataract procedures, which of course will help us again to erode the waiting list that we're experiencing.
Jackie Bailey.
as the Scottish Government fiddles with waiting list statistics and Neil Gray rolls back on promises to end the longest waits, it bears repeating that this week the Royal College of Emergency Medicine warned of the continuing crisis in A&E with an estimated 818 excess and avoidable deaths in emergency departments. Now, the First Minister has been in government for the past 18 years. When will he get serious and wake up to the reality facing patients and hard-working staff? And when will we see the end of an 8-hour and 12-hour waits in Scotland's NHS?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, as I indicated, we've just seen in the 12-hour data for July 2025 the lowest level of 12-hour waits since 2023 in the aftermath of the pandemic. So that is just one illustration of the focus of the government on addressing these particular issues. Now, Jackie Baillie has railed against me for the technical changes that have been made by Public Health Scotland on an independent basis outside of government to make sure the statistics are accurate. What Jackie Baillie didn't rail against was the Welsh Labour government doing exactly the same thing when they were looking at this issue. That just tells us what we long knew, that Jackie Baillie comes to this Parliament, postures on the health service and is full of hypocrisy about the stance that she takes.
Question number 6, Faisal Chowdhury.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what urgent action the Scottish Government is taking in light of Public Health Scotland's estimate that dementia in Scotland is set to rise by more than 50% by 2044.
First Minister.
President Officer, I recognise the evidence the member references, and I know many in the Chamber will personally know of an individual or a family impacted by dementia. That is why I recently held a roundtable discussion in Bute House on this subject to discuss how we can better unlock innovation in how we support people with advanced dementia. This was suggested to me by Sir Ian Anderson, a distinguished Scottish businessman, and I have asked the Minister for Social Care and Mental Wellbeing to take forward this work. We will also build on efforts we are already undertaking to better understand what interventions can make a difference to people's dementia risk, learning from initiatives like the Scottish Government-backed pilot of a brain health service and clinic in Aberdeen. And of course, our 10-year dementia strategy focuses on enhancing support in our communities, including through investment in grassroots support, challenging the stigma people face following a diagnosis, and improving the training and expertise of our health and social care workforce.
Faisal Chowdhury.
I thank the First Minister for this answer. Public Health Scotland estimate that by 2044, as many as 53,800 more people could be living with dementia compared to 2019. Alzheimer's Scotland have rightly warned about the state of investment in dementia now, let alone in the future. And is it any wonder, under this government, IJBs face an estimated funding gap of £560 million this year? Does the First Minister accept that it's time to wake up and to the dementia time bomb facing Scotland and prioritise prevention, early intervention and supporting people living with this disease?
First Minister.
Yes, I do, and agree with these measures, because that's what's in the Population Health Framework and the Dementia Strategy. So that's exactly the approach the government's taking. So there's a link between what Mr Chowdhury has put to me with what Mr Whittle was putting to me a moment ago about the need to shift to early intervention and community support. So all of these aspirations, and I acknowledge the importance of the expansion of care, and to ensure that we deliver much more of this at home in the community where people want to be to care for their loved ones in their own circumstances, and that will be the focus of the government's activities in this area. But we will be helped by the dialogue that's been initiated by the roundtable that I held in Bute House and the considerable impetus that's been given to that thinking by the formulation of the dementia strategy and the intervention of Sir Ian Anderson in supporting me in this activity.
Annie Wells.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Dementia doesn't just affect those diagnosed, but also hundreds of unpaid carers across Glasgow and Scotland who provide them with vital support. And I would ask First Minister, what urgent steps is the Scottish Government taking to ensure that they get financial, emotional and respite support they need as dementia cases continue to rise?
First Minister.
Well, there is support available for carers in Scotland, which is not available in other parts of the United Kingdom. And that's because of the investment the government makes in our social security system. Now, so I welcome Annie Wells's support for the social security measures the government is taking forward, and I do look forward to supporting the government's budget as we protect these measures in the forthcoming period. And perhaps she can also persuade her front bench to stop arguing for cuts to social security, because if we do that, we'll undermine the support that's available that Annie Wells wants me to support, because the Conservatives cannot have their cake and eat it. If we want to have support for carers, we've got to be prepared to vote for it in the budget.
Thank you. We move to constituency and general supplementaries, and if all members are concise, we'll be able to involve more members. And I call Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. STV has this morning announced plans to cut 60 jobs, 10% of its workforce and regional news programming across Scotland. This follows news that the Daily Record publisher Reach plc plans to cut over 300 jobs. Does the First Minister agree with me that local news journalism plays a more vital role than ever in our democracy, and outline what steps the Scottish Government is taking to protect journalism jobs in Scotland?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I very much agree with the concern expressed by Rona Mackay, who brings, of course, her formidable experience as a former journalist before she became a Member of Parliament to this issue. Local journalism is absolutely important for the scrutiny of public policy at all levels in Scottish society. So I was concerned to hear this morning of the reports about STV and also the news recently about the Daily Record. The Cabinet Secretary Angus Robertson has indicated to committee this morning that he will engage with STV, Ofcom and the trade unions to highlight our concerns, and we will give whatever assistance we can in this respect. It's absolutely a vital part of our democracy that we have sustained media engagement, and the Government will do all that it can to support those affected. And of course, this will be a very worrying time for all of the affected employees, and they have my understanding and my support.
Douglas Lumsden.
Thank you, President Officer. And just to follow up on that question about STV, and it's good to hear the First Minister give his support, and because one of the big consequences will be far less local news that is not relevant to the North and North East. So does the First Minister agree with me that this change is bad news for Scottish viewers, in particular for rural communities, and should be reconsidered as a matter of urgency?
First Minister.
I do share the concern, the specific concern that Mr Lumsden puts to me about this issue, because I understand one of the components of the STV proposals is that the Aberdeen news programme would potentially cease broadcasting, and I do acknowledge that there are very different issues that affect communities around the country, and STV are very successful at reflecting those different issues in different parts of the country. So I think Mr Lumsden raises a particular issue that relates to different parts of the country, and I entirely agree with him on these concerns, and I'll make sure that's reflected in the representations made by the Cabinet Secretary on this matter.
Neil Bibby.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The news from STV this morning will have a significant impact on Scottish media workers, the economy, our democracy and the viewing public across Scotland, and with 1 in 10 STV staff facing redundancy, this will have a serious impact on them in particular. The example of the Aberdeen News programme requires specific approval by Ofcom. Can I ask the First Minister, will the Scottish Government be making specific representations to Ofcom on the future of the Aberdeen News programme?
First Minister.
I assure Mr Bibby that we will, but there will be a whole range of other issues upon which we will make representations. But I think the point that Mr Lumsden and Mr Bibby have both made is an important point in reflecting the different experiences and issues that affect different parts of the country. So that has to be considered by Ofcom, and those issues will feature in the representations made by Mr Robertson.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. A new OECD report has forecast that the UK is facing the highest level of inflation of any major economy this year, with annual rate of inflation soaring to 3.5% by the end of the year, citing higher food prices as a factor. Households across Scotland are facing real and significant pressures right now, but the Labour UK Government seems incapable of of acting to provide any meaningful support. Does the First Minister share my concerns that Labour has lost the cost of living crisis? And in the face of this Westminster economic mismanagement, can he advise what steps his SNP government is taking to support families during this cost of living crisis?
First Minister.
So the Scottish Government has taken a number of steps, both in our policy programme and in our decisions on public sector pay, to try to address the issues, the legitimate issues that Mr Stewart puts to me. So in our public sector pay policy, we have put forward settlements which I believe are appropriate and take into account the pressures of inflation that Mr Stewart has set out. In our policy programme, of course, there are a range of provisions that are available in Scotland, such as free prescriptions or eye examinations, or the free bus travel system that's available, or the free tuition that's available to university students, or also the availability of early learning and childcare support, which is valued at up to £6,000 for every eligible child. And of course, in recent days or weeks, the Government has introduced the abolition, well, we've abolished peak rail fares, which for a commuter from Glasgow to Edinburgh will save them nearly 50% of their costs on a daily basis. That is concrete action to support, where the SNP Government is delivering to support people in the cost of living crisis.
Thank you. Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Last week, Christie's of Fauquebers, a nursery that grows around 20 million trees a year, went into administration. The 32 highly skilled and experienced jobs are being retained, but it's a worrying time for the staff and the Christie family at the moment. Christie's have been growing trees in Moray since 1820 and are crucial to the forestry industry across Scotland. So will the First Minister agree to meet with me and those involved with the company at the moment to see what support the Scottish Government may be able to make available to ensure that 7 generations of the Christies operating in Moray can continue into the future?
First Minister.
I'm very familiar with Christie's as a long-standing business in Fauquebers, and Richard Lockhead, the local member, has kept me up to date with the worrying situation that is faced there. The Government, as Mr Ross will know, has extensive tree planting commitments as part of our climate change agenda, and although I was in the Moray area during the summer recess, opening a very significant tree nursery which will support that activity. But even despite the scale of that investment in that tree facility, private sector grown trees through Christie's and other companies, no, I shouldn't say through Christie's, private sector capacity is still going to be needed to meet our tree planting targets. So the issue that Mr Ross raises is a significant issue. I'm very happy the Cabinet Secretary, Maggie will happily engage with Mr Ross on this question, and the support of the Government and Hans Enterprise in engaging with Christie's, recognising their contribution towards the climate change activity, merits that engagement. I'll make sure that happens.
Thank you. Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. National Records of Scotland revealed this week that 1,185 people died an alcohol-related death last year. Of those, 48 deaths occurred in parts of my Ayrshire, South of Scotland region. While a national decline is welcome, we cannot be complacent. Alcohol-related deaths remain significantly higher than they were decades ago, and those living in our most deprived communities are 4.5 times more likely to die from alcohol-specific causes than those in the least deprived areas. So can I ask the First Minister to provide an update on the targeted intervention his government is taking or might take to address this inequality?
First Minister.
This is an important issue, and it is welcome, as Carol Mockin indicated, that there has been a fall in alcohol-related deaths, but although there remain a very large number of deaths as a consequence of alcohol harm. Obviously, the Government has taken some strategic interventions around minimum unit pricing, which was designed to address this issue, and I'm pleased to see the progress that's been made as a consequence, and of course we have updated that policy approach. There are other steps that the Government will take in relation to public health education and advising individuals of the dangers of excess alcohol consumption. And also the need for us to work collaboratively to ensure that all parts of the public and the private sector are working together to convey those messages as well. And that will underpin the approach that we take to the limitation of harm as a consequence of the steps we take on alcohol marketing and promotion. And I'm keen that we engage constructively with the industry to make sure that's the case.
Brief supplementary, Jamie Green.
Thank you. The First Minister will be aware that the shortlist for the 2 new freight vessels for the Northern Islands will be announced shortly, and I welcome that new vessels are coming. I don't know anyone that disputes that. But it's been reported that that shortlist will contain 2 yards in China and 2 yards in Turkey. Meanwhile, we do have a shipyard some 70 miles from this Parliament that is owned by the Scottish Government, funded by the Scottish taxpayer, and is absolutely desperate for new work. First Minister, my question simply is, when will Scottish Government procurement policy give adequate weighting to the economic benefits that awarding Scottish shipyards some contracts would reap? And when will he give this yard some contracts finally?
First Minister.
President, can I first of all say that no UK yards submitted returns on the Northern Isles freight contracts, and Ferguson Marine did not enter the competition as the vessels are of a size too large to be accommodated at the shipyard. So there is a particular reason why that couldn't be the case. But on the rest of it, I'm very sympathetic to the point that Mr Green makes, and of course the Government is engaging on this question about enabling every consideration to be given to ensure that the Ferguson Marine Yard is able to receive work in due course, and I've confirmed that to Parliament before. We are, of course, seeing developments in the delivery of the new ferries that have been commissioned. The MV Isle of Islay is currently on its final acceptance trials to come from the yard in Turkey, and we look forward with anticipation to the vessel joining the fleet in due course. And of course that is the first of 4 vessels that are coming to replenish the CalMac fleet in the larger vessels, along with the Glen Rosa, which is close to completion at Ferguson Marine. So Mr Green can be assured that the Government is investing substantially in the ferry network, and I was delighted also to see the MV Caledonian Isles return to Ardrossan, where I hope very shortly it can recommence sailings to Arran, and I'm sure that will bring much joy to Mr Green and to his constituents.
Brief supplementary, Claire Haughey.
Thank you, President Officer. New figures from the Office of Rail and Road show that Scotland has the lowest rate of train cancellations in the UK. Can the First Minister advise what assessment the Scottish Government has made of these findings, and can he say how this SNP Scottish Government is investing in our publicly owned rail services to deliver the best services for rail passengers in Scotland?
First Minister.
Well, the data that Claire Haughey puts to Parliament is very significant indeed, I think. The average across GB for rail cancellations is 4.1%. And the lowest of any part of the United Kingdom is the ScotRail network at 2.2%. So I want to... And performance has remained consistently strong, with punctuality around 90% across all 3 years of public ownership. So I want to say a very warm thank you to the staff of ScotRail, who work incredibly hard to make sure we have a first-class rail service in Scotland that is outperforming the rest of the United Kingdom, which has got cancellation rates half the rest of the United Kingdom. It just shows what public ownership and SNP leadership can deliver.
Thank you. That concludes First Minister's questions. The next item of business is a member's business debate in the name of Paul Sweeney, and there will now be a short suspension to allow those leaving the chamber and the public gallery to do so.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Lewis McLean.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Saoirse Healy.
Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Donald C. Stewart.
Broadcasting Scotland is Scotland's independent broadcaster, providing factual news, reporting on the issues important to the people of Scotland.
We are committed to public service broadcasting, and with your support, we will produce even more programmes.
Provide opportunities for young people interested in media production and broadcasting, and challenge preconceptions of what Scottish media looks like, amplifying Scotland's voice and reflecting its communities.
We can already deliver high-quality live news, and we will create the highest quality programmes for you to enjoy. But we can only do that with your support.
So please, subscribe to and share our channel, or donate to Broadcasting Scotland via the link in the description. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.